Chapter 17. I put on a few million extra kilograms. The horrible thing was, I could see the family resemblance. Atlas had the same regal expression as Zoe, the same cold, proud look in his eyes that Zoe sometimes got when she was mad, though on him it just looked evil. He was all the things I'd originally disliked about Zoe, with none of the good I'd come to appreciate. "Let Artemis go," Zoe demanded. Atlas walked closer to the chained goddess. "Perhaps you'd like to take the sky for her then." "Be my guest." Zoe opened her mouth to speak, but Artemis said, "No, do not offer, Zoe, I forbid you." Atlas smirked. He knelt next to Artemis and tried to touch her face, but the goddess bit at him, almost taking off his fingers. "Hoo-hoo!" Atlas chuckled. "You see, daughter, Lady Artemis likes her new job. I think I will have all the Olympians take turns carrying my burden. Once Lord Kronos rules again, and this is the centre of our palace. It will teach those weaklings some humility." I looked at Annabeth. She was desperately trying to tell me something. She motioned her head towards Luke, but all I could do was stare at her. I hadn't noticed before, but something about her had changed. Her blonde hair was now streaked with grey. "From holding the sky," Thalia muttered, as if she'd read my mind. The weight should have killed her. "I don't understand," I said. "Why can't Artemis just let go of the sky?" Atlas laughed. "How little you understand, young one. This is the point where the sky and the earth first met, where Uranus and Gaia first brought forth their mighty children, the Titans. The sky still yearns to embrace the earth. Someone must hold it at bay, or else it would crush down upon this place, instantly flattening the mountain and everything within 100 leagues. Once you have taken the burden, there is no escape." Atlas smiled. "Unless someone else takes it from you." He approached us, studying Thalia and me. "So, these are the best heroes of the age, eh? Not much of a challenge." "Fight us," I said, "and let's see." "Have the gods taught you nothing? An immortal does not fight a mere mortal directly. It is beneath our dignity. I will have Luke crush you instead." "So, you're another coward," I said. Atlas's eyes glowed with hatred. With difficulty, he turned his attention to Thalia. "As for you, daughter of Zeus, it seems Luke was wrong about you." "I wasn't wrong," Luke managed. He looked terribly weak, and he spoke every word as if it were painful. If I didn't hate his guts so much, I almost would have felt sorry for him. "Thalia, you can still join us. Call the Aphiatorus. It will come to you, look." He waved his hand, and next to us a pool of water appeared, a pond ringed in black marble, big enough for the Aphiatorus. I could imagine Bessie in that pool. In fact, the more I thought about it, the more I was sure I could hear Bessie mooing. "Don't think about him." Suddenly Grover's voice was inside my mind, the empathy link. I could feel his emotions. He was on the verge of panic. "I'm losing Bessie. Block the thoughts." I tried to make my mind go blank. I tried to think about basketball players, skateboards, the different kinds of candy in my mum's store. Anything but Bessie. "Thalia, call the Aphiatorus," Luke persisted, "and you will be more powerful than the gods." "Luke," her voice was full of pain, "what happened to you? Don't you remember all those times we talked? All those times we cursed the gods? Our fathers have done nothing for us. They have no right to rule the world." Thalia shook her head. "Free Annabeth. Let her go." "If you join me," Luke promised, "it can be like old times, the three of us together, fighting for a better world. Please, Thalia, if you don't agree." His voice faltered. "It's my last chance. He will use the other way. If you don't agree. Please." I don't know what he meant, but the fear in his voice sounded real enough. I believed that Luke was in danger. His life depended on Thalia's joining his cause, and I was afraid Thalia might believe it too. "Do not, Thalia," Zoe warned. "We must fight them." Luke waved his hand again, and a fire appeared, a bronze brazier, just like the one at camp, a sacrificial flame. "Thalia," I said, "no." Behind Luke, the golden sarcophagus began to glow. As it did, I saw images in the mist all around us, black marble walls rising, the ruins becoming whole, a terrible and beautiful palace rising around us, made of fear and shadow. "We will raise Mount Orpheus right here," Luke promised, in a voice so strained it was hardly his. "Once more, it will be stronger and greater than Olympus. Look, Thalia, we are not weak." He pointed towards the ocean, and my heart fell. Marching up the side of the mountain from the beach, where the Princess Andromeda was docked, was a great army. Draconae and Lastrygonians, monsters and half-bloods, hellhounds, harpies and other things I couldn't even name. The whole ship must have been emptied, because there were hundreds, many more than I'd seen on board last summer, and they were marching towards us. In a few minutes they would be here. "This is only a taste of what is to come," Luke said. "Soon we will be ready to storm Camp Half-Blood. And after that, Olympus itself. All we need is your help." For a terrible moment, Thalia hesitated. She gazed at Luke, her eyes full of pain, as if the only thing she wanted in the world was to believe him. Then she levelled her spear. "You aren't Luke. I don't know you any more." "Yes, you do, Thalia," he pleaded. "Please don't make me. Don't make him destroy you." There was no time. If that army got to the top of the hill, we would be overwhelmed. I met Annabeth's eyes again. She nodded. I looked at Thalia and Zoe, and I decided it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to die fighting with friends like this. "Now," I said. Together, we charged. Thalia went straight for Luke. The power of her shield was so great that his dragon women bodyguards fled in panic, dropping the golden coffin and leaving him alone. But despite his sickly appearance, Luke was still quick with his sword. He snarled like a wild animal and counterattacked. When his sword, Backbiter, met Thalia's shield, a ball of lightning erupted between them, frying the air with yellow tendrils of power. As for me, I did the stupidest thing of my life, which is saying a lot. I attacked the Titan Lord Atlas. He laughed as I approached. A huge javelin appeared in his hands. His silk suit melted into full Greek battle armour. "Go on, then." "Percy," Zoe said, "beware." I knew what she was warning me about. Chiron had told me long ago. Immortals are constrained by ancient rules, but a hero can go anywhere, challenge anyone, as long as he has the nerve. Once I attacked, Atlas was free to retaliate directly, with all his might. I swung my sword, and Atlas knocked me aside with the shaft of his javelin. I flew through the air and slammed into a black wall. It wasn't mist anymore. The palace was rising. Brick by brick, it was becoming real. "Fool!" Atlas screamed gleefully, swatting aside one of Zoe's arrows. "Did you think simply because you could challenge that petty war god that you could stand up to me?" The mention of Ares sent a jolt through me. I shook off my daze and charged again. If I could get to that pool of water, I could double my strength. The javelin's point slashed towards me like a scythe. I raised Riptide, planning to cut off his weapon at the shaft, but my arm felt like lead. My sword suddenly weighed a ton. And I remembered Ares' warning, spoken on the beach in Los Angeles so long ago. When you need it most, your sword will fail you. "Not now," I pleaded, but it was no good. I tried to dodge, but the javelin caught me in the chest, sent me flying like a rag doll. I slammed into the ground, my head spinning. I looked up and found I was at the feet of Artemis, still straining under the weight of the sky. "Run, boy," she told me. "You must run." Atlas was taking his time, coming towards me. My sword was gone. It had skittered away over the edge of the cliff. It might reappear in my pocket, maybe in a few seconds, but it didn't matter. I'd be dead by then. Luke and Thalia were fighting like demons, lightning crackling around them. Annabeth was on the ground, desperately struggling to free her hands. "Die, little hero," Atlas said. He raised his javelin to impale me. "No," Zoe yelled, and a volley of silver arrows sprouted from the armpit chink in Atlas's armour. "Ah!" he bellowed, and turned towards his daughter. I reached down and felt Riptide back in my pocket. I couldn't fight Atlas, even with a sword. And then a chill went down my spine. I remembered the words of the prophecy. The Titan's curse must one withstand. I couldn't hope to beat Atlas, but there was someone else who might stand a chance. "The sky," I told the goddess. "Give it to me." "No, boy," Artemis said. Her forehead was beaded with metallic sweat, like quicksilver. "You don't know what you're asking. It will crush you." "Annabeth took it. She barely survived. She had the spirit of a true huntress. You will not last so long." "I'll die anyway," I said. "Give me the weight of the sky." I didn't wait for her answer. I took out Riptide and slashed through her chains. Then I stepped next to her and braced myself on one knee, holding up my hands, and touched the cold, heavy clouds. For a moment, Artemis and I bore the weight together. It was the heaviest thing I'd ever felt, as if I were being crushed under 1,000 trucks. I wanted to black out from the pain, but I breathed deeply. I can do this. Then Artemis slipped out from under the burden, and I held it alone. Afterwards, I tried many times to explain what it felt like. I couldn't. Every muscle in my body turned to fire. My bones felt like they were melting. I wanted to scream, but I didn't have the strength to open my mouth. I began to sink lower and lower to the ground, the sky's weight crushing me. "Fight back," Grover's voice said inside my head. "Don't give up." I concentrated on breathing. If I could just keep the sky aloft a few more seconds. I thought about Bianca, who had given her life so we could get here. If she could do that, I could hold the sky. My vision turned fuzzy. Everyone and everything was tinged with red. I caught glimpses of the battle, but I wasn't sure if I was seeing clearly. There was Atlas in full battle armour, jabbing with his javelin, laughing insanely as he fought. and Artemis a blur of silver. She had 2 wicked hunting knives, each as long as her arm, and she slashed wildly at the Titan, dodging and leaping with unbelievable grace. She seemed to change form as she manoeuvred. She was a tiger, a gazelle, a bear, a falcon. Or perhaps that was just my fevered brain. Zoe shot arrows at her father, aiming for the chinks in his armour. He roared in pain each time one found its mark, but they affected him like bee stings. He just got madder and kept fighting. Thalia and Luke went spear on sword, lightning still flashing around them. Thalia pressed Luke back with the aura of her shield. Even he was not immune to it. He retreated, wincing and growling in frustration. "Yield!" Thalia yelled. "You never could beat me, Luke!" He bared his teeth. "We'll see, my old friend." Sweat poured down my face. My hands were slippery. My shoulders would have screamed with agony if they could. I felt like the vertebrae in my spine were being welded together by a blowtorch. Atlas advanced, pressing Artemis. She was fast, but his strength was unstoppable. His javelin slammed into the earth where Artemis had been a split second before, and a fissure opened in the rocks. He leapt over it and kept pursuing her. She was leading him back towards me. "Get ready," she spoke in my mind. I was losing the ability to think through pain. My response was something like, "Ow!" "You fight well for a girl," Atlas laughed, "but you are no match for me." He feinted with the tip of his javelin, and Artemis dodged. I saw the trick coming. Atlas's javelin swept round and knocked Artemis's legs off the ground. She fell, and Atlas brought up his javelin tip for the kill. "No!" Zoe screamed. She leapt between her father and Artemis and shot an arrow straight into the Titan's forehead, where it lodged like a unicorn's horn. Atlas bellowed in rage. He swept aside his daughter with the back of his hand, sending her flying into the black rocks. I wanted to shout her name, run to her aid, but I couldn't speak or move. I couldn't even see where Zoe had landed. Then Atlas turned on Artemis with a look of triumph in his face. Artemis seemed to be wounded. She didn't get up. "The first blood in a new war," Atlas gloated, and he stabbed downward. As fast as thought, Artemis grabbed his javelin shaft. It hit the earth right next to her, and she pulled backwards, using the javelin like a lever, kicking the Titan Lord and sending him flying over her. I saw him coming down on top of me, and I realised what would happen. I loosened my grip on the sky, and as Atlas slammed into me, I didn't try to hold on. I let myself be pushed out of the way and rolled for all I was worth. The weight of the sky dropped onto Atlas's back, almost smashing him flat until he managed to get his knees, struggling to get out from under the crushing weight of the sky. But it was too late. "No!" He bellowed so hard it shook the mountain. "Not again!" Atlas was trapped under his old burden. I tried to stand and fell back again, dazed from pain. My body felt like it was burning up. Thalia backed Luke to the edge of a cliff, but still they fought on, next to the golden coffin. Thalia had tears in her eyes. Luke had a bloody slash across his chest, and his pale face glistened with sweat. He lunged at Thalia, and she slammed him with her shield. Luke's sword spun out of his hands and clattered to the rocks. Thalia put her spear point to his throat. For a moment, there was silence. "Well?" Luke asked. He tried to hide it, but I could hear fear in his voice. Thalia trembled with fury. Behind her, Annabeth came scrambling, finally free from her bonds. Her face was bruised and streaked with dirt. "Don't kill him." "He's a traitor," Thalia said. "A traitor." In my daze, I realised that Artemis was no longer with me. She had run off towards the black rocks, where Zoe had fallen. "We'll bring Luke back," Annabeth pleaded. "To Olympus. He'll be useful." "Is that what you want, Thalia?" Luke sneered. "To go back to Olympus in triumph, to please your dad?" Thalia hesitated, and Luke made a desperate grab for her spear. "No!" Annabeth shouted, but it was too late. Without thinking, Thalia kicked Luke away. He lost his balance, terror on his face, and then he fell. "Luke!" Annabeth screamed. We rushed to the cliff's edge. Below us, the army from the Princess Andromeda had stopped in amazement. They were staring at Luke's broken form on the rocks. Despite how much I hated him, I couldn't stand to see it. I wanted to believe he was still alive, but that was impossible. The fall was 15 meters at least, and he wasn't moving. One of the giants looked up and growled, "Kill them." Thalia was stiff with grief, tears streaming down her cheeks. I pulled her back as a wave of javelins sailed over our heads. We ran for the rocks, ignoring the curses and threats of Atlas as we passed. "Artemis!" I yelled. The goddess looked up, her face almost as grief-stricken as Thalia's. Zoe lay in the goddess's arms. She was breathing. Her eyes were open, but still. "The wound is poisoned," Artemis said. Atlas poisoned her? I asked. No, the goddess said. Not Atlas. She showed us the wound in Zoe's side. I'd almost forgotten her scrape with Ladon the dragon. The bite was much worse than Zoe had let on. I could barely look at the wound. She had charged into battle against her father with a horrible cut already sapping her strength. The stars, Zoe murmured. I cannot see them. Nectar and ambrosia, I said. Come on, we have to get her some. No one moved. Grief hung in the air. The army of Kronos was just below the rise. Even Artemis was too shocked to stir. We might have met our doom right there, but then I heard a strange buzzing noise. Just as the army of monsters came over the hill, a Sopwith camel swooped down out of the sky. Get away from my daughter, Dr. Chase called down, and his machine guns burst into life, peppering the ground with bullet holes and startling the whole group of monsters into scattering. Dad? Yelled Annabeth in disbelief. Run, he called back, his voice growing fainter as the biplane swooped by. This shook Artemis out of her grief. She stared up at the antique plane, which was now banking around for another strafe. A brave man, Artemis said with grudging approval. Come, we must get Zoe away from here. She raised her hunting horn to her lips, and its clear sound echoed down the valleys of Marin. Zoe's eyes were fluttering. Hang in there, I told her. It'll be all right. The Sopwith camel swooped down again. A few giants threw javelins, and one flew straight between the wings of the plane, but the machine guns blazed. I realised with amazement that somehow Dr. Chase must have got hold of celestial bronze to fashion his bullets. The first row of snake women wailed as the machine gun's volley blew them into the sulphurous yellow powder. That's my dad, Annabeth said in amazement. We didn't have time to admire his flying. The giants and snake women were already recovering from their surprise. Dr. Chase would be in trouble soon. Just then the moonlight brightened, and a silver chariot appeared from the sky, drawn by the most beautiful deer I had ever seen. It landed right next to us. Get in, Artemis said. Annabeth helped me get Thalia on board, and then I helped Artemis with Zoe. We wrapped Zoe in a blanket as Artemis pulled the reins, and the chariot sped away from the mountain, straight into the air. Like Santa Claus's sleigh, I murmured, still dazed with pain. Artemis took time to look back at me. Indeed, young half-blood. And where do you think that legend came from? Seeing us safely away, Dr. Chase turned his biplane and followed us like an honour guard. It must have been one of the strangest sights ever, even for the Bay Area. A silver flying chariot pulled by deer, escorted by a Sopwith camel. Behind us, the army of Kronos roared in anger as they gathered on the summit of Mount Tamalpais. But the loudest sound was the voice of Atlas, bellowing curses against the gods as he struggled under the weight of the sky. Chapter 18. A friend says goodbye. We landed at Chrissy Field after nightfall. As soon as Dr. Chase stepped out of his Sopwith camel, Annabeth ran to him and gave him a huge hug. Dad, you flew. You shot. Oh my God, that was the most amazing thing I've ever seen. Her father blushed. Well, not bad for a middle-aged mortal, I suppose. But the celestial bronze bullets, how did you get those? Ah, well, you did leave quite a few half-blood weapons in your room in Virginia the last time you left. Annabeth looked down embarrassed. I noticed Dr. Chase was very careful not to say ran away. I decided to try melting some down to make bullet casings, he continued. Just a little experiment. He said it like it was no big deal, but it had a gleam in his eye. I could understand all of a sudden why Athena, goddess of crafts and wisdom, had taken a liking to him. He was an excellent mad scientist at heart. Dad, Annabeth faltered. Annabeth, Percy, Thalia interrupted. Her voice was urgent. She and Artemis were kneeling at Zoe's side, binding the huntress's wounds. Annabeth and I ran over to help, but there wasn't much we could do. We had no ambrosia or nectar. No regular medicine would help. It was dark, but I could see that Zoe didn't look good. She was shivering, and the faint glow that usually hung around her was fading. Can't you heal her with magic? I asked Artemis. I mean, you're a goddess. Artemis looked troubled. Life is a fragile thing, Percy. If the fates will the string to be cut, there is little I can do, but I can try. She tried to set her hand on Zoe's side, but Zoe gripped her wrist. She looked into the goddess's eyes, and some kind of understanding passed between them. Have I served thee well? Zoe whispered. With great honour, Artemis said softly, the finest of my attendants. Zoe's face relaxed. Rest. At last. I can try to heal the poison, my brave one. But in that moment, I knew it wasn't just the poison that was killing her. It was her father's final blow. Zoe had known all along that the oracle's prophecy was about her. She would die by a parent's hand, and yet she'd taken the quest anyway. She had chosen to save me, and Atlas's fury had broken her inside. She saw Thalia and took her hand. I am sorry we argued, Zoe said. We could have been sisters. It's my fault, Thalia said, blinking hard. You were right about Luke, about heroes, men, everything. Perhaps not all men, Zoe murmured. She smiled weakly at me. Do you still have the sword, Percy? I couldn't speak, but I brought out Riptide and put the pen in her hand. She grasped it contentedly. You spoke the truth, Percy Jackson. You are nothing like Hercules. I am honoured that you carry this sword. A shudder ran through her body. Zoe, I said. Stars, she whispered. I can see the stars again, my lady. A tear trickled down Artemis's cheek. Yes, my brave one, they are beautiful tonight. Stars, Zoe repeated, her eyes fixed on the night sky, and she did not move again. Thalia lowered her head. Annabeth gulped down a sob, and her father put his hands on her shoulders. I watched as Artemis cupped her hand above Zoe's mouth and spoke a few words in ancient Greek. A silvery wisp of smoke exhaled from Zoe's lips and was caught in the hand of the goddess. Zoe's body shimmered and disappeared. Artemis stood, said a kind of blessing, breathed into her cupped hand, and released the silver dust to the sky. It flew up, sparkling, and vanished. For a moment, I didn't see anything different. Then Annabeth gasped. Looking up at the sky, I saw that the stars were brighter now. They made a pattern I had never noticed before, a gleaming constellation that looked a lot like a girl's figure, a girl with a bow, running across the sky. Let the world honour you, my huntress, Artemis said. Live forever in the stars. It wasn't easy saying our goodbyes. The thunder and lightning were still boiling over Mount Tamalpais in the north. Artemis was so upset she flickered with silver light. This made me nervous because if she suddenly lost control and appeared in her fully divine form, we would disintegrate if we looked at her. I must go to Olympus immediately, Artemis said. I will not be able to take you, but I will send help. The goddess set her hand on Annabeth's shoulder. You are brave beyond measure, my girl. You will do what is right. Then she looked quizzically at Thalia, as if she weren't sure what to make of this younger daughter of Zeus. Thalia seemed reluctant to look up, but something made her, and she held the goddess's eyes. I wasn't sure what passed between them, but Artemis's gaze softened with sympathy, and then she turned to me. You did well, she said. For a man. I wanted to protest, but then I realised it was the first time she hadn't called me a boy. She mounted her chariot, which began to glow. We averted our eyes. There was a flash of silver and the goddess was gone. Well, Dr. Chase sighed. She was impressive, though I must say I still prefer Athena. Annabeth turned towards him. Dad, I'm sorry that... Shh. He hugged her. Do what you must, my dear. I know this isn't easy for you. His voice was a little shaky, but he gave Annabeth a brave smile. Then I heard the whoosh of large wings. 3 Pegasi descended through the fog, 2 white-winged horses and 1 pure black one. Blackjack, I called. Yo, boss, he called. You managed to stay alive okay without me? It was rough, I admitted. I brought Guido and pork pie with me. How you doing? The other 2 Pegasi spoke in my mind. Blackjack looked me over with concern, then checked out Dr. Chase, Thalia and Annabeth. Any of these goons you want us to stampede? Nah, I said aloud. These are my friends. We need to get to Olympus pretty fast. No problem, Blackjack said, except for the mortal over there. Hope he's not going. I assured him Dr. Chase was not. The professor was staring open-mouthed at the Pegasi. Fascinating, he said. Such manoeuvrability. How does the wingspan compensate for the weight of the horse's body, I wonder? Blackjack cocked his head. What? Why, if the British had these Pegasi in the cavalry charges in the Crimea, Dr. Chase said, the charge of the Light Brigade... Dad, Annabeth interrupted. Dr. Chase blinked. He looked at his daughter and managed to smile. I'm sorry, my dear. I know you must go. He gave her one last awkward, well-meaning hug as she turned to climb aboard the Pegasus Guido. Dr. Chase called, Annabeth, I know San Francisco is a dangerous place for you, but please remember, you always have a home with us. We will keep you safe. Annabeth didn't answer, but her eyes were red as she turned away. Dr. Chase started to say more, then apparently thought better of it. He raised his hand in sad farewell and trudged away across the dark field. Thalia and Annabeth and I mounted our Pegasi. Together we soared over the bay and flew towards the eastern hills. Soon, San Francisco was only a glittering crescent behind us, with an occasional flicker of lightning in the north. Thalia was so exhausted she fell asleep on Pork Pie's back. I knew she had to be really tired to sleep in the air, despite her fear of heights, But she didn't have much to worry about. Her Pegasus flew with ease, adjusting himself every once in a while so Thalia stayed safely on his back. Annabeth and I flew along side by side. "Your dad seems cool," I told her. It was too dark to see her expression. She looked back, even though California was far behind us now. "I guess so," she said. "We've been arguing for so many years." "Yeah, you said." "You think I was lying about that?" It sounded like a challenge, but a pretty half-hearted one. Like she was asking it of herself. "I didn't say you were lying. It's just, he seems okay. Your stepmom too. Maybe they've, I don't know, got cooler since you saw them last." She hesitated. "They're still in San Francisco, Percy. I can't live so far from camp." I didn't want to ask my next question. I was scared to know the answer, but I asked it anyway. "So what are you going to do now?" We flew over a town, an island of lights in the middle of the dark. It whisked by so fast we might have been in an aeroplane. "I don't know," she admitted. "But thank you for rescuing me." "Hey, no big deal. We're friends." "You didn't believe I was dead?" "Never." She hesitated. "Neither is Luke, you know. I mean, he isn't dead." I stared at her. I didn't know if she was cracking under the stress or what. "Annabeth, that fall was pretty bad. There's no way." "He isn't dead," she insisted. "I know it. The same way you knew about me." That comparison didn't make me too happy. The towns were zipping by faster now, islands of light thicker together, until the whole landscape below was a glittering carpet. Dawn was close. The eastern sky was turning grey, and up ahead a huge white and yellow glow spread out before us, the lights of New York. "How's that for speedy, boss?" Blackjack bragged. "We get extra hay for breakfast or what?" "You're the man, Blackjack," I told him. The horse, I mean." "You don't believe me about Luke," Annabeth said. "But we'll see him again. He's in trouble, Percy. He's under Kronos' spell." I didn't feel like arguing, though it made me mad. How could she still have any feelings for that creep? How could she possibly make excuses for him? He deserved that fall. He deserved... Okay, I'll say it. He deserved to die. Unlike Bianca, unlike Zoe, Luke couldn't be alive. It wouldn't be fair. "There it is," Thalia's voice. She'd woken up. She was pointing towards Manhattan, which was quickly zooming into view. It started. "What started?" I asked. Then I looked where she was pointing. High above the Empire State Building, Olympus was its own island of light. A floating mountain ablaze with torches and braziers. White marble palaces gleaming in the early morning air. "The winter solstice," Thalia said. "The council of the gods." Chapter 19. The gods vote how to kill us. Flying was bad enough for a son of Poseidon, but flying straight up to Zeus's palace with thunder and lightning swirling around it was even worse. We circled over Midtown Manhattan, making one complete orbit round Mount Olympus. I'd only been there once before, travelling by elevator up to the secret 600th floor of the Empire State Building. This time, if it were possible, Olympus amazed me even more. In the early morning darkness, torches and fires made the mountainside palaces glow 20 different colours, from blood red to indigo. Apparently no one ever slept on Olympus. The twisting streets were full of demigods and nature spirits and minor godlings bustling about, riding chariots or sedan chairs carried by cyclops. Winter didn't seem to exist here. I caught the scent of the gardens in full bloom, jasmine and roses and even sweeter things I couldn't name. Music drifted up from many windows, the soft sounds of lyres and reed pipes. Towering at the peak of the mountain was the greatest palace of all, the glowing white Hall of the Gods. Our Pegasi set us down in the outer courtyard in front of huge silver gates. Before I could even think to knock, the gates opened by themselves. "Good luck, boss," Blackjack said. Yeah, I didn't know why, but I had a sense of doom. I'd never seen all the gods together. I knew any one of them could blast me to dust, and a few of them would like to. "Hey, if you don't come back, can I have your cabin for my stable?" I looked at the Pegasus. "Just a thought," he said. "Sorry." Blackjack and his friends flew off, leaving Thalia, Annabeth and me alone. For a minute we stood there regarding the palace, the way we'd stood together in front of Westover Hall, that seemed like a million years ago. And then, side by side, we walked into the throne room. 12 enormous thrones made a U around a central hearth, just like the placement of the cabins at camp. The ceiling above glittered with constellations, even the newest one, Zoe the Huntress, making her way across the heavens with her bow drawn. All of the seats were occupied. Each god and goddess was about 5 meters tall, and I'm telling you, if you've ever had a dozen all-powerful super-huge beings turn their eyes on you at once, well, suddenly facing monsters seemed like a picnic. "Welcome, heroes," Artemis said. "Brrr." That's when I noticed Bessie and Grover. A sphere of water was hovering in the centre of the room, next to the hearth fire. Bessie was swimming happily around, swishing his serpent tail and poking his head out of the sides and the bottom of the sphere. He seemed to be enjoying the novelty of swimming in a magic bubble. Grover was kneeling at Zeus's throne, as if he'd just been giving a report. But when he saw us, he cried, "You made it!" He started to run towards me, and then remembered he was turning his back on Zeus and looked for permission. "Go on," Zeus said. But he wasn't really paying attention to Grover. The Lord of the Sky was staring intently at Thalia. Grover trotted over. None of the gods spoke. Every clop of Grover's hooves echoed on the marble floor. Bessie splashed in the bubble of water. The half-fire crackled. I looked nervously at my father, Poseidon. He was dressed similarly to the last time I had seen him. Beach shorts, a Hawaiian shirt and sandals. He had a weathered, sun-tanned face with a dark beard and deep green eyes. I wasn't sure how he would feel about seeing me again, but the corners of his eyes crinkled with smile lines. He nodded, as if to say, "It's okay." Grover gave Annabeth and Thalia big hugs, and then he grasped my arms. "Percy, Bessie, I made it, but you have to convince them. They can't do it." "Do what?" I asked. "Heroes," Artemis called. The goddess slid down from her throne and turned to human size, a young, auburn-haired girl perfectly at ease in the midst of the giant Olympians. She walked towards us, her silver robe shimmering. There was no emotion on her face. She seemed to walk in a column of moonlight. "The council has been informed of your deeds," Artemis told us. "They know that Mount Ophrys is rising in the west. They know of Atlas's attempt for freedom and the gathering armies of Kronos. We have voted to act." There was some mumbling and shuffling among the gods, as if they weren't all happy with this plan, but nobody protested. "At my lord Zeus's command," Artemis said, "my brother Apollo and I shall hunt the most powerful monsters, seeking to strike them down before they can join the Titans' cause. Lady Athena shall personally check on the other Titans to make sure they do not escape their various prisons. Lord Poseidon has been given permission to unleash his full fury on the cruise ship Princess Andromeda and send it to the bottom of the sea. And as for you, my heroes," she turned to face the other immortals, "these half-bloods have done Olympus a great service. Would any here deny that?" She looked around at the assembled gods, meeting their faces individually. Zeus in his dark pinstriped suit, his black beard neatly trimmed, and his eyes sparkling with energy. Next to him sat a beautiful woman with silver hair braided over one shoulder and a dress that shimmered with colours like peacock feathers, the Lady Hera. On Zeus's right, my father Poseidon. Next to him, a huge lump of a man with a leg and steel brace, a misshapen head, and a wild brown beard, fire flickering through his whiskers, the Lord of the Forge, Hephaestus. Hermes winked at me. He was wearing a business suit today, checking messages on his Caducus cell phone. Apollo leaned back in his golden throne with his shades on. He had iPod headphones on, so I wasn't sure he was even listening, but he gave me a thumbs up. Dionysus looked bored, twirling a grapevine between his fingers, and Ares, well, he sat on his chrome and leather throne, glowering at me while he sharpened a knife. On the ladies' side of the throne room, a dark-haired goddess in green robes sat next to Hera on a throne woven of apple tree branches. Demeter, goddess of the harvest. Next to her sat a beautiful grey-eyed woman in an elegant white dress. She could only be Annabeth's mother, Athena. Then there was Aphrodite. She smiled at me knowingly and made me blush in spite of myself. All the Olympians in one place. So much power in this room, it was a miracle the whole palace didn't blow apart. "I gotta say," Apollo broke the silence, "these kids did okay." He cleared his throat and began to recite. "Heroes win laurels." Yes, first class," Hermes interrupted, like he was anxious to avoid Apollo's poetry. "All in favour of not disintegrating them." A few tentative hands went up. Demeter, Aphrodite. "Wait just a minute," Ares growled. He pointed at Thalia and me. "These two are dangerous. It'd be much safer while we've got them here." "Ares," Poseidon interrupted. "They are worthy heroes. We will not blast my son to bits." "Nor my daughter," Zeus grumbled. "She has done well." Thalia blushed. She studied the floor. I knew how she felt. I'd hardly ever talked to my father, much less got a compliment. The goddess Athena cleared her throat and sat forward. "I am proud of my daughter as well, but there is a security risk here, with the other two." "Mother," Annabeth said, "how can you—" Athena cut her off with a calm but firm look. "It is unfortunate that my father Zeus and my uncle Poseidon chose to break their oath not to have more children. Only Hades kept his word, a fact that I find ironic. As we know from the great prophecy, children of the three elder gods, such as Thalia and Percy, are dangerous. As thick-headed as he is, Ares has a point." "Right," Ares said. "Hey, wait a minute. Who are you calling—" He started to get up, but a grapevine grew around his waist like a seatbelt and pulled him back down. "Oh, please, Ares," Dionysus sighed. "Save the fighting for later." Ares cursed and ripped away the vine. "You're one to talk, you old drunk. You seriously want to protect these brats?" Dionysus gazed down at us wearily. "I have no love for them. Athena, do you truly think it's safest to destroy them?" "I do not pass judgment," Athena said. "I only point out the risk. What we do, the council must decide." "I will not have them punished," Artemis said. "I will have them rewarded. If we destroy heroes who do us a great favour, then we are no better than the Titans. If this is Olympian justice, I will have none of it." "Calm down, sis," Apollo said. "Geez, you need to lighten up." "Don't call me sis. I will reward them." "Well," Zeus grumbled, "perhaps. But the monster at least must be destroyed. We have agreement on that." A lot of nodding heads. It took me a second to realise what they were saying. Then my heart turned to lead. "Bessie? You want to destroy Bessie?" "Moo," Bessie protested. My father frowned. "You have named the Ophiutorus Bessie?" "Dad," I said, "he's just a sea creature. A really nice sea creature. You can't destroy him." Poseidon shifted uncomfortably. "Percy, the monster's power is considerable. If the Titans were to steal it or—" "You can't," I insisted. I looked at Zeus. I probably should have been afraid of him, but I stared him right in the eye. "Controlling the prophecies never works. Isn't that true? Besides, the Ophiutorus is innocent. Killing something like that is wrong. It's just as wrong as Kronos eating his children just because of something they might do. It's wrong." Zeus seemed to consider this. His eyes drifted to his daughter Thalia. "And what of the risk? Kronos knows full well if one of you were to sacrifice the beast's entrails, you would have the power to destroy us. Do you think we can let that possibility remain? You, my daughter, will turn 16 on the morrow, just as the prophecy says." "You have to trust them," Annabeth spoke up. "Sir, you have to trust them." Zeus scowled. "Trust a hero?" "Annabeth is right," Artemis said, "which is why I must first make a reward. My faithful companion, Zoe Nightshade, has passed into the stars. I must have a new lieutenant, and I intend to choose one. But first, Father Zeus, I must speak to you privately." Zeus beckoned Artemis forward. He leaned down and listened as she spoke in his ear. A feeling of panic seized me. "Annabeth," I said under my breath. "Don't." She frowned at me. "What?" "Look, I need to tell you something," I continued. The words came stumbling out of me. "I couldn't stand it if... I don't want you to..." "Percy," she said, "you look like you're going to be sick." And that's how I felt. I wanted to say more, but my tongue betrayed me. It wouldn't move because of the fear in my stomach. And then Artemis turned. "I shall have a new lieutenant," she announced, "if she will accept it." "No," I murmured. "Thalia," Artemis said, "daughter of Zeus, will you join the hunt?" Stunned silence filled the room. I stared at Thalia, unable to believe what I was hearing. Annabeth smiled. She squeezed Thalia's hand and let it go, as if she'd been expecting this all along. "I will," Thalia said firmly. Zeus rose, his eyes full of concern. "My daughter, consider well." "Father," she said, "I will not turn 16 tomorrow. I will never turn 16. I won't let this prophecy be mine. I stand with my sister Artemis. Kronos will never tempt me again." She knelt before the goddess and began the words I remembered from Bianca's oath, that seemed like so long ago. "I pledge myself to the goddess Artemis. I turn my back on the company of men." Afterwards, Thalia did something that surprised me, almost as much as the pledge. She came over to me, smiled, and in front of the whole assembly she gave me a big hug. I blushed. When she pulled away and gripped my shoulders, I said, aren't you supposed to not do that anymore? Hug boys, I mean." "I'm honouring a friend," she corrected. "I must join the hunt, Percy. I haven't known peace since Half-Blood Hill. I finally feel like I have a home. But you're a hero. You will be the one of the prophecy." "Great," I muttered. "I'm proud to be your friend." She hugged Annabeth, who was trying hard not to cry. Then she even hugged Grover, who looked ready to pass out, like somebody had just given him an all-you-can-eat enchilada coupon. Then Thalia went to stand by Artemis's side. "Now, for the Ophiutorus," Artemis said. "This boy is still dangerous," Dionysus warned. "The beast is a temptation to great power, even if we spare the boy." "No." I looked around at all the gods. "Please, keep the Ophiutorus safe. My dad can hide him under the sea somewhere, or keep him in an aquarium here in Olympus. But you have to protect him." "And why should we trust you?" rumbled Hephaestus. "I'm only 14, I said. "If this prophecy is about me, that's 2 years. 2 more years." 2 years for Kronos to deceive you, Athena said. Much can change in 2 years, my young hero. Mother, Annabeth said, exasperated. It is only the truth, child. It is a bad strategy to keep the animal alive, or the boy. My father stood. I will not have a sea creature destroyed if I can help it, and I can help it. He held out his hand, and a trident appeared in it, a 6-metre-long bronze shaft with 3 spear tips that shimmered with blue, watery light. I will vouch for the boy and the safety of the Ophiutorus. You won't take it under the sea, Zeus stood suddenly. I won't have that kind of bargaining chip in your possession. Brother, please, Poseidon sighed. Zeus's lightning bolt appeared in his hand, a shaft of electricity that filled the whole room with ozone storm smell. Fine, Poseidon said. I will build an aquarium for the creature here. Hephaestus can help me. The creature will be safe. We shall protect it with all our powers. The boy will not betray us. I vouch for this on my honour. Zeus thought about this. All in favour? To my surprise, a lot of hands went up. Dionysus abstained. So did Ares and Athena, but everybody else. We have a majority, Zeus decreed, and so, since we will not be destroying these heroes, I imagine we should honour them. Let the triumph celebration begin. There are parties, and then there are huge major blowout parties, and then there are Olympian parties. If you ever get a choice, go for the Olympian. The 9 muses cranked up the tunes, and I realised the music was whatever you wanted it to be. The gods could listen to classical, and the younger demigods could hear hip-hop or whatever, and it was all the same soundtrack. No arguments, no fights to change the radio station, just requests to crank it up. Dionysus went around growing refreshment stands out of the ground, and a beautiful woman walked with him, arm in arm, his wife, Ariadne. Dionysus looked happy for the first time. Nectar and ambrosia overflowed from golden fountains, and platters of mortal snack food crowded the banquet tables. Golden goblets filled with whatever drink you wanted. Grover trotted around with a full plate of tin cans and enchiladas, and his goblet was full of double espresso latte, which he kept muttering over like an incantation. Pan! Pan! Gods kept coming over to congratulate me. Thankfully, they had reduced themselves to human size, so they didn't accidentally trample partygoers under their feet. Hermes started chatting with me, and he was so cheerful I hated to tell him what had happened to his least favourite son Luke. But before I could even get up the courage, Hermes got a call on his caduceus and walked away. Apollo told me I could drive his sun chariot any time, and if I ever wanted archery lessons. Thanks, I told him, but seriously, I'm no good at archery. Ah, nonsense, he said. Target practice from the chariot as we fly over the US? Best fun there is. I made some excuses and wove through the crowds that were dancing in the palace courtyards. I was looking for Annabeth. Last time I saw her, she'd been dancing with some minor godling. Then a man's voice behind me said, You won't let me down, I hope. I turned and found Poseidon smiling at me. Dad! Hi! Hello, Percy. You've done well. His praise made me uneasy. I mean, it felt good, but I knew just how much he'd put himself on the line, vouching for me. It would have been a lot easier to let the others disintegrate me. I won't let you down, I promised. He nodded. I had trouble reading God's emotions, but I wondered if he had some doubts. Your friend Luke. He's not my friend, I blurted out, and then I realised it was probably rude to interrupt. Sorry. Your former friend Luke, Poseidon corrected. He once promised things like that. He was Hermes' pride and joy. Just bear that in mind, Percy. Even the bravest can fall. Luke fell pretty hard, I agreed. He's dead. Poseidon shook his head. No, Percy, he is not. I stared at him. What? I believe Annabeth told you this. Luke still lives. I have seen it. His boat sails from San Francisco with the remains of Kronos even now. He will retreat and regroup before assaulting you again. I will do my best to destroy his boat with storms, but he is making alliances with my enemies, the older spirits of the ocean. They will fight to protect him. How can he be alive? I said. That fool should have killed him. Poseidon looked troubled. I don't know, Percy, but beware of him. He is more dangerous than ever, and the golden coffin is still with him, still growing in strength. What about Atlas, I said. Who's to prevent him from escaping again? Couldn't he just force some giant or something to take the sky for him? My father snorted in derision. If it was so easy, he would have escaped long ago. No, my son. The curse of the sky can only be forced upon a Titan, one of the children of Gaia and Oreanas. Anyone else must choose to take the burden of their own free will. Only a hero, someone with strength, a true heart and great courage would do such a thing. No one in Kronos' army would dare to try bear that weight, even upon pain of death. Luke did it, I said. He let Atlas go. Then he tricked Annabeth into saving him and used her to convince Artemis to take the sky. Yes, Poseidon said. Luke is an interesting case. I think he wanted to say more, but just then Bessie started mooing from across the courtyard. Some demigods were playing with his water sphere, joyously pushing it back and forth over the top of the crowd. I'd better take care of that, Poseidon grumbled. We can't have the Ophiutorus tossed around like a beach ball. Be good, my son. We may not speak again for some time. And just like that, he was gone. I was about to keep searching the crowd when another voice spoke. Your father takes a great risk, you know. I found myself face to face with a grey-eyed woman who looked so much like Annabeth. I almost called her that. Athena. I tried not to sound resentful after the way she'd written me off in the council, but I guess I didn't hide it very well. She smiled dryly. Do not judge me too harshly, half-blood. Wise counsel is not always popular, but I spoke the truth. You are dangerous. You never take risks? She nodded. I can see the point. You may perhaps be useful, and yet your fatal flaw may destroy us all, well, as yourself. My heart crept into my throat. A year ago, Annabeth and I had a talk about fatal flaws. Every hero had one. Hers, she said, was pride. She believed she could do anything, like holding up the world, for instance, or saving Luke. But I didn't really know what mine was. Athena looked almost sorry for me. Kronos knows your flaw, even if you do not. He knows how to study his enemies. Think, Percy, how has he manipulated you? First, your mother was taken from you. Then your best friend, Grover. Now my daughter, Annabeth. She paused, disapproving. In each case, your loved ones have been used to lure you into Kronos' traps. Your fatal flaw is personal loyalty, Percy. You do not know when it is time to cut your losses. To save a friend, you would sacrifice the world in a hero of the prophecy. That is very, very dangerous. I balled my fists. That's not a flaw, just because I want to help my friends. The most dangerous flaws are those which are good in moderation, she said. Evil is easy to fight. Lack of wisdom, that is very hard indeed. I wanted to argue, but I found I couldn't. Athena was pretty darn smart. I hope the council's decisions prove wise, Athena said. But I will be watching, Percy Jackson. I do not approve of your friendship with my daughter. I do not think it wise for either of you. And should you begin to waver in your loyalties? She fixed me with her cold grey stare, and I realised what a terrible enemy Athena could make. 10 times worse than Ares or Dionysus, or maybe even my father. Athena would never give up. She would never do something rash or stupid just because she hated you. And if she made a plan to destroy you, it would not fail. Percy, Annabeth said, running through the crowd. She stopped short when she saw who I was talking to. Oh, Mum. I will leave you, Athena said, for now. She turned and strode through the crowds, which parted before her as if she was carrying Aegis. Was she giving you a hard time? Annabeth asked. No, I said. It's fine. She studied me with concern. She touched the new streak of grey in my hair that matched hers exactly, our painful souvenir from holding Atlas's burden. There was a lot I'd wanted to say to Annabeth, but Athena had taken the confidence out of me. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I do not approve of your friendship with my daughter. So, Annabeth said, what did you want to tell me earlier? The music was playing. People were dancing in the streets. I said, I was thinking we got interrupted at Westover Hall, and I think I owe you a dance. She smiled slowly. All right, seaweed brain. So I took her hand, and I don't know what everybody else heard, but to me it sounded like a slow dance. A little sad, but maybe a little hopeful too. Chapter 20. I get a new enemy for Christmas. Before I left Olympus, I decided to make a few calls. It wasn't easy, but I finally found a quiet fountain in a corner garden and sent an iris message to my brother Tyson, under the sea. I told him about our adventures, and Bessie. He wanted to hear every detail about the cute baby cow serpent, and I assured him that Annabeth was safe. Finally, I got round to explaining how the shield he'd made me last summer had been damaged in the manticore attack. Yay, Tyson said. That means it was good. It saved your life. It sure did, big guy, I said. But now it's ruined. Not ruined, Tyson promised. I will visit and fix it next summer. The idea picked me up instantly. I guess I hadn't realised how much I missed having Tyson around. Seriously, I asked. They'll let you take time off? Yes, I have made 2,741 magic swords, Tyson said proudly, showing me the newest blade. The boss says good work. He will let me take the whole summer off. I will visit camp. We talked for a while about war preparations and our dad's fight with the old sea gods and all the cool things we could do together next summer. But then Tyson's boss started yelling at him and he had to get back to work. I dug out my last golden drachma and made one more iris message. Sally Jackson, I said. Upper East Side, Manhattan. The mist shimmered, and there was my mum at our kitchen table, laughing and holding hands with her friend, Mr. Blowfish. I felt so embarrassed. I was about to wave my hand through the mist and cut the connection, but before I could, my mum saw me. Her eyes got wide. She let go of Mr. Blowfish's hand really quickly. "Oh, Paul, you know what? I left my writing journal in the living room. Would you mind getting it for me?" "Sure, Sally, no problem." He left the room, and instantly my mum leaned towards the iris message. "Percy, are you all right?" I'm fine. How's that writing seminar going?" She pursed her lips. "It's fine, but that's not important. Tell me what's happened." I filled her in as quickly as I could. She sighed with relief when she heard that Annabeth was safe. "I knew you could do it," she said. "I'm so proud." "Yeah, well, I'd better let you get back to your homework." "Percy, Paul and I... Mum, are you happy?" The question seemed to take her by surprise. She thought for a moment. "Yes, I really am, Percy. Being around him makes me happy." "Then it's cool. Seriously, don't worry about me." The funny thing was, I meant it. Considering the quest I'd just had, maybe I should have been worried for my mum. I'd seen just how mean people could be to each other, like Hercules was to Zoe Nightshade, like Luke was to Thalia. I'd met Aphrodite, goddess of love, in person, and her powers had scared me worse than Ares. But seeing my mother laughing and smiling, after all the years she'd suffered with my nasty ex-stepfather, Gabe Ugliano, I couldn't help feeling happy for her. "You promised not to call him Mr. Blowfish?" she asked. I shrugged. "Well, maybe not to his face, anyway." "Sally," Mr. Blowfish called from our living room. "You need the green binder or the red one?" "I'd better go," she told me. "See you for Christmas?" "Are you putting blue candy in my stocking?" She smiled. "If you're not too old for that." "I'm never too old for candy." "I'll see you then." She waved her hand across the mist. Her image disappeared, and I thought to myself that Thalia had been right. So many days ago at Westover Hall, my mum really was pretty cool. Compared to Mount Olympus, Manhattan was quiet. Friday before Christmas, but it was early in the morning, and hardly anyone was on Fifth Avenue. Argus, the many-eyed security chief, picked up Annabeth, Grover and me at the Empire State Building, and ferried us back to camp through a light snowstorm. The Long Island Expressway was almost deserted. As we trudged back up Half-Blood Hill to the pine tree where the golden fleece glittered, I half expected to see Thalia there, waiting for us. But she wasn't. She was long gone with Artemis and the rest of the hunters, off on their next adventure. Chiron greeted us at the big house with hot chocolate and toasted cheese sandwiches. Grover went off with his satyr friends to spread the word about our strange encounter with the magic of Pan. Within an hour, the satyrs were all running around agitated, asking where the nearest espresso bar was. Annabeth and I sat with Chiron and some of the other senior campers, Beckendorf, Selina Beauregard, and the Stoll brothers. Even Clarice from the Ares cabin was there, back from her secretive scouting mission. I knew she must have had a difficult quest, because she didn't even try to pulverize me. She had a new scar on her chin, and her dirty blonde hair had been cut short and ragged, like someone had attacked it with a pair of safety scissors. "I got news," she mumbled uneasily. "Bad news." "I'll fill you in later," Chiron said, with forced cheerfulness. "The important thing is, you have prevailed, and you have saved Annabeth." Annabeth smiled at me gratefully, which made me look away. For some strange reason, I found myself thinking about the Hoover Dam and the odd mortal girl I'd run into there, Rachel Elizabeth Dare. I didn't know why, but her annoying comments kept coming back to me. "Do you always kill people when they blow their nose?" I was only alive because so many people had helped me, even a random mortal girl like that. I'd never even explained to her who I was. "Luke is alive," I said. Annabeth was right. Annabeth sat up. "How do you know?" I tried not to feel annoyed by her interest. I told her what my dad had said about the Princess Andromeda. "Well," Annabeth shifted uncomfortably in her chair, "if the final battle does come from Percy, when Percy is 16, at least we have 2 more years to figure something out." I had a feeling that when she said figure something out, she meant get Luke to change his ways, which annoyed me even more. Chiron's expression was gloomy. Sitting by the fire in his wheelchair, he looked really old. I mean, he was really old, but he usually didn't look it. 2 years may seem like a long time, he said, but it's the blink of an eye. I still hope you are not the child of the prophecy, Percy. But if you are, then the Second Titan War is almost upon us. Kronos' first strike will be here. How do you know? I asked. Why would he care about camp? Because the gods use heroes as their tools, Chiron said simply. Destroy the tools and the gods will be crippled. Luke's forces will come here. Mortal, demigod, monstrous. We must be prepared. Clarice's news may give us a clue as to how they will attack, but... There was a knock on the door, and Nico D'Angelo came huffing into the parlour, his cheeks bright red from the cold. He was smiling, but he looked around anxiously. Hey, where's my sister? Dead silence. I stared at Chiron. I couldn't believe nobody had told him yet. And then I realised why. They'd been waiting for us to appear, to tell Nico in person. That was the last thing I wanted to do, but I owed it to Bianca. Hey, Nico. I got up from my comfortable chair. Let's take a walk, okay? We need to talk. He took the news in silence, which somehow made it worse. I kept talking, trying to explain how it had happened, how Bianca had sacrificed herself to save the quest, but I felt like I was only making things worse. She wanted you to have this. I brought out the little god figurine Bianca had found in the junkyard. Nico held it in his palm and stared at it. We were standing at the dining pavilion, just where we'd last spoken before I went on the quest. The wind was bitterly cold, even with the camp's magical weather protection. Snow fell lightly against the marble steps. I figured outside the camp borders there must be a blizzard happening. You promised you would protect her, Nico said. He might as well have stabbed me with a rusty dagger. It would have hurt less than reminding me of my promise. Nico, I said, I tried, but Bianca gave herself up to save the rest of us. I told her not to, but you promised. He glared at me, his eyes rimmed with red. He closed his small fist around the god statue. I shouldn't have trusted you. His voice broke. You lied to me. My nightmares were right. Wait, what nightmares? He flung the god statue to the ground. It clattered across the icy marble. I hate you. She might be alive, I said desperately. I don't know for sure. She's dead. He closed his eyes. His whole body trembled with rage. I should have known it earlier. She's in the fields of Asphodel, standing before the judges right now being evaluated. I can feel it. What do you mean you can feel it? Before he could answer, I heard a new sound behind me, a hissing, clattering noise I recognised all too well. I drew my sword, and Nico gasped. I whirled and found myself facing 4 skeleton warriors. They grinned fleshless grins and advanced with swords drawn. I don't know how they'd made it inside the camp, but it didn't matter. I'd never get help in time. You're trying to kill me, Nico screamed. You brought these things. No, I mean, yes, they followed me, but no, Nico, run. They can't be destroyed. I don't trust you. The first skeleton charged. I knocked aside its blade, but the other 3 kept coming. I sliced one in half, but immediately it began to knit back together again. I knocked another's head off, but it just kept fighting. Run, Nico, I yelled. Get help. No. He pressed his hands to his ears. I couldn't fight 4 at once, not if they wouldn't die. I slashed, whirled, blocked, jabbed, but they just kept advancing. It was only a matter of seconds before the zombies overpowered me. No! Nico shouted louder. Go away! The ground rumbled beneath me. The skeletons froze. I rolled out of the way just as a crack opened at the feet of the 4 warriors. The ground ripped apart like a snapping mouth. Flames erupted from the fissure, and the earth swallowed the skeletons in one loud crunch. Silence. In the place where the skeletons had stood, a 6-metre-long scar wove across the marble floor of the pavilion. Otherwise, there was no sign of the warriors. Awestruck, I looked to Nico. How did you... Go away, he yelled. I hate you. I wish you were dead. The ground didn't swallow me up, but Nico ran, down the steps, heading towards the woods. I started to follow, but slipped and fell on the icy steps. When I got up, I noticed what I'd slipped on. I picked up the god statue Bianca had retrieved from the junkyard for Nico. The only statue he didn't have, she'd said. A last gift from his sister. I stared at it with dread, because now I understood why the face looked familiar. I'd seen it before. It was a statue of Hades, Lord of the Dead. Annabeth and Grover helped me search the woods for hours, but there was no sign of Nico D'Angelo. We have to tell Chiron, Annabeth said, out of breath. No, I said. She and Grover both stared at me. Grover said nervously. What do you mean, no? I was still trying to figure out why I'd said that, but the words spilled out of me. We can't let anyone know. I don't think anyone realises that Nico is a son of Hades, Annabeth said. Percy, do you have any idea how serious this is? Even Hades broke the oath. This is horrible. I don't think so, I said. I don't think Hades broke the oath. What? He's their dad, I said. But Bianca and Nico have been out of commission for a long time, since even before World War II. The Lotus Casino, Grover said, and he told Annabeth about the conversations we'd have with Bianca on the quest. She and Nico were stuck there for decades. They were born before the oath was made. I nodded. But how did they get out? Annabeth protested. I don't know, I admitted. Bianca said a lawyer came and got them and drove them to Westover Hall. I don't know who that could have been or why. Maybe it's part of this great stirring thing. I don't think Nico understands who he is. But we can't go telling anyone, not even Chiron. If the Olympians find out, it might start them fighting among each other again, Annabeth said. That's the last thing we need. Grover looked worried. But you can't hide things from the gods, not forever. I don't need forever, I said. Just 2 years, until I'm 16. Annabeth paled. But Percy, this means the prophecy might not be about you. It might be about Nico. We have to... No, I said. I choose the prophecy. It will be about me. Why are you saying that? She cried. You want to be responsible for the whole world? It was the last thing I wanted, but I didn't say that. I knew I had to step up and claim it. I can't let Nico be in any more danger, I said. I owe that much to his sister. I let them both down. I'm not going to let that poor kid suffer any more. The poor kid who hates you and wants to see you dead, Grover reminded me. Maybe we can find him, I said. We can convince him it's okay. Hide him somewhere safe. Annabeth shivered. If Luke gets hold of him. Luke won't, I said. I'll make sure he's got other things to worry about, namely me. I wasn't sure Chiron believed the story Annabeth and I told him. I think he could tell I was holding something back about Nico's disappearance. But in the end, he accepted it. Unfortunately, Nico wasn't the first half-blood to disappear. So young, Chiron sighed, his hands on the rail of the front porch. Alas, I hope he was eaten by monsters, much better than being recruited into the Titan's army. That idea made me really uneasy. I almost changed my mind about telling Chiron, but I didn't. You really think the first attack will be here? I asked. Chiron stared at the snow falling on the hills. I could see smoke from the Dragon Guardian, at the pine tree, the glitter of the distant fleece. It will not be until summer at least, Chiron said. This winter will be hard, the hardest of many centuries. It's best that you go home to the city. Percy, try to keep your mind on school and rest. You will need rest. I looked at Annabeth. What about you? Her cheeks flushed. I'm going to try San Francisco after all. Maybe I can keep an eye on Mount Tam. Make sure the Titans don't try anything else. You'll send an Iris message if anything goes wrong. She nodded. But I think Chiron's right. It won't be until the summer. Luke will need time to regain his strength. I didn't like the idea of waiting. Then again, next August, I would be turning 15. So close to 16, I didn't want to think about it. All right, I said. Just take care of yourself. And no crazy stunts in the Sopwith camel. She smiled tentatively. Deal. And, Percy? Whatever she was going to say was interrupted by Grover, who stumbled out of the big house, tripping over tin cans. His face was haggard and pale, like he'd seen a spectre. He spoke, Grover cried. Calm down, my young satyr, Chiron said, frowning. What is the matter? I was playing music in the parlour. He stammered. And drinking coffee, lots and lots of coffee. And he spoke in my mind. Who? Annabeth demanded. Pan, Grover wailed. The Lord of the Wild himself. I heard him. I have to find a suitcase. Whoa, 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 I said. What did he say? Grover stared at me. Just 3 words. He said, I await you. And that is the end of Percy Jackson and the Titan's Curse. I will be back with Percy Jackson and the Battle of the Labyrinth in the not-too-distant future. Hope you enjoyed that. Goodbye.